welcome to KTN Livewire. Tonight we want to go and dig deeper to the issue, the thorny issue that has been playing out for a whole week now, and that is the standoff between Code and Jubilee. Depending how you sit on that issue has been very, very passionately been discussed in Parliament. But first, Kenyan taxpayers should prepare to pay an extra 510 million shillings each month to cater for higher perks being demanded by members of the county assemblies countrywide. Now that's if their wishes are upheld. In what appears to be a well-coordinated strategy, members of county assemblies across the country unanimously agreed to suspend their sessions indefinitely to agitate for salary increment from the 79,000 shillings a month to a high of 300,000 shillings. Our senior reporter, Patrick Amimo, looks at the figures and cost implications of that move.
The clamor for higher salaries by the National Assembly has now spread down to county assemblies. Members have suspended sessions to push for better pay and allowances. During the March 4th polls, voters in more than half of the counties did not elect women to their assemblies, yet the constitution states that not more than 2/3 of members of the county assembly can be of the same gender. Thus, women had to be nominated to meet the 1/3 gender rule. This comes with serious financial implications. Counties that do not elect women will have to pay salaries and allowances for the extra members from their kitty of devolved funds meant for development and provision of other services. The current 47 county assemblies have an estimated membership of 2,300. Of these, 1,450 are elected. 376 members comprise 8 candidates from each county to represent the youth and persons with disabilities, and a further estimated 500 members are women nominees. The basic salary for each member of the county assembly is 79,200 shillings. This means the 2,300 members cost the taxpayer over 184 million shillings per month. But they are now clamoring for a monthly salary of 300,000 shillings each. If their demand is met, the monthly wage bill will shoot from a low of 184 million shillings to a high of 699 million shillings, increasing agony to the taxpayer.
The proposed amount was 300,000. I do not know how they came down to the figure of 79,200.
The governor is on 700,000, and you are telling the county representative to oversee that money, he is on 52,000 shillings. What are we saying? Are we devolving corruption?
Our salaries, ladies and gentlemen of the press, are lower than the personal assistant of the governor.
The Salary Commission gave them a good figure of 300,000. Should have reduced it to 200. Because most of those county reps are also university graduates, and they do most of the donkey work down there.
Besides, members of the county assemblies are pushing to benefit from a vehicle grant of 3 million shillings each and other allowances like commuter, house, entertainment and medical cover.
As things stand now, we are unable completely to attend sessions of this house and play our legislative role. Once we've been told that our members can be paid community allowance, they can be paid house allowance, then we shall come to Kakamega.
We have members coming from as far as 100 kilometers from the county assembly, yet they have no provision for house allowance, they have no provision for traveling allowance.
For now, operations in most county assemblies has come to a standstill. But then, it's not only the county representatives who are agitating for better pay, we have the silent voice of county executives. Patrick Amimo, KTN, Nairobi.
All right, on Livewire tonight we'll be taking the big question, and I'll be asking you tonight, and I'm asking you tonight, do you think county representatives deserve to be paid more? Do you think county representatives deserve to be paid more? Text me your yes or no responses to the number 8040, and during the course of this show I'll sample your views and give you that poll results in the end of this discussion. But to the discussion that we want to concentrate tonight, that discussion that has been for the last entire week, that involves Code and Jubilee. The coalition partners have been unable to agree on just the committee membership of the two controlling committees, if you like, that's the PSC and the PIC. Now that discussion has been not only emotive but extremely divisive. Let's set the stage for our conversation tonight.
Role of oversight is not the preserve of a particular group in this house. If there is leadership required at any one time in this house, it is now. And let us do it at this early stage. Don't tell us that you are doing us a favor.
This scenario now threatens to disrupt the smooth running of the businesses before this house. that the minority is not only lacking leadership in this house, but they are getting directions as to how to transact business in this house from quarters outside of this house. I beg for your protection, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Uta, Sergeant at Arms, as that member leaves, is excluded from the precincts of Parliament for the next 3 days. We will transact business in the manner that I've directed.
All right, having said that, I have two gentlemen who are the center of that row, if you like, and indeed, Fred Ota, MP Nyando, you're ready and able to transact business in this show.
Yes.
Karibu sana.
Thank you very much.
And indeed, Kikuyu MP Anthony Kimani. Gentlemen, both Karibu sana.
Thank you very much.
All right, let me start with you.
Yes.
With that suspension and not being able to transact business, let's start with just how this issue has been emotive. And it cannot be discussed on a rational level, that it's getting extremely divisive.
But thank you, Smith, for inviting us to be here with my good friend, the Honorable Anthony Kimani, the MP for Kabete, and I mean Kikuyu, sorry. But I want to tell you that that thing was really provoked by my good friend, Honorable Anthony. And you know, for sure, we just came from a very competitive general election. And we are still nursing our wounds, some of us. And so when he touched the live wire, like what I've seen here, and talking about my party leader as an old Mse, then I thought that was way out for a matter to be discussed in Parliament. And so therefore I had to stand on a point of order. But I think the Speaker was a little bit slumbered, so I had to shout more to alert him that there are some remarks that are going on in the House and he was not able to control it. I think that's how things started, and the Speaker provoked the Standing Order 107 to suspend me, which I thought was also very punitive. It could have maybe less than 3 hours to be back in the House.
All right. Anthony, he says you provoked this conversation and you brought issues that are not substantive. Just to get this out of the way, why did you touch this live wire?
Well, thank you, Smart, again for inviting me here, and it's good I'm here with my friend and colleague, the Honorable Ota, who I have a lot of respect for. And probably it's good to start by maybe first making it clear that whatever I said was not and was never directed at any particular individual that I knew of. And it's good to understand the background that was coming from. Over lunch last week with a member of the CORD coalition, one of the young members in the CORD coalition, we had a discussion and I was asking him, why is it that you people in CORD are not submitting your names? And somebody told me that we had agreed on names, the names were ready, but there's a Mzee who has called from London and directed the party leadership in the House not to submit the names. So from the onset, when I spoke of an old man, I honestly did that so innocently, since I did not know who this old man was. And all I was seeking to do when I stood up, because I also stood up on a point of order, was to seek clarification from the CORD leadership in the House, since it was clear that they were getting directions from quarters outside of the House. And I wanted the CORD leadership in the House to come out and explain it to Kenyans. Who were these other people? Because London is a big city. But who's
this old man in your mind?
Old men.
Who's this old man in your mind?
You could tell us, truly. I'm actually hearing it for the first time from my friend, the Honorable Ota, that they imagined, and I understand now the emotional outburst that was there in the House, that they imagined I was talking about their party leader, the Honorable Raila Odinga, who I must say I've got tremendous respect for. And if I knew it was the Honorable Raila Odinga who had called from London, I would have said it without fear that the Honorable Raila Odinga is directing members of the CORD coalition from outside of this House. But I was coming from a background where a member from their coalition has availed information to me that there is this Mzee who was called from London. And I was also eager to know because he never disclosed.
But the Honorable Kimani, with all due respect to you, you know, when you are talking about an old Mzee made a call from London, and you had a very interactive discussion with this honorable member from our court coalition, he should have told you, because it's not an angel or not a ghost, he should have, this old Mzee should have, you know, he should have a name. And probably you knew for sure that our party leader was in London by then.
Incidentally,
Yeah. Yes.
if you remember, the only party leader who was in London as a Tuesday was the Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta, His Excellency the President. And that is why I was also very keen to want to find out from the court leadership.
But where was this ghost name? You know, because we can't be put at ransom in Parliament to discuss the, you know, things that are important to
That
this
is
nation,
exactly
especially
this
setting up
information-
the committees.
This
And
information
you're talking
came to
about
me.
a known name.
This information
A
came
ghost
to me
name.
from a member of the court coalition.
Yeah, but who is this
And
person?
since the member was not willing to divulge the name,
Yeah.
I thought it's only wise to ask it on the floor of the House. Since it was so clear to me that the court coalition for sure was getting directions on how to transact business on the floor of the House and in committees of the House, from quarters, and those were my words from that clip. They are getting directions from quarters outside of this world, out of this House. And there is an old man. Actually, Mzee, by all means, is not an insult to anybody. If you have qualified to be called Mzee, when I'm of age to be called Mzee, and actually my own children today call me Mzee, and I don't take offense in it because I'm a Mzee to them. I'm an old man to them. But when I say that, let me say, if it did hurt anybody, I am very sorry for that, because I never intended to hurt anybody's feelings. All I wanted was to seek information from the court leadership. Who were these other parties who are directing them on how to transact business in the House? And it is important to put this very clearly, that it is quite clear to me that the court coalition lacks leadership inside the House. For all intents and purposes, they have been telling us in the
respect to you, honorable members, that is untrue.
They've been telling us in the media,
because
smart,
for sure you know we have a minority leader and we have a minority whip.
Time and again we have
Yes.
seen your own members in court
Yes.
telling us that we want certain other individuals to come and provide strong leadership in the House.
We have never said that, and you are
It's
now
been
saying for
quoted in
the
the
first
media.
time. We have never said that in the debate in the House.
Not
That
in
we are
the House.
looking for somebody. You know, things that are people are speculating outside, they are not true. We need to deal with factual things, because we have leadership in the House, and we will be able to give this government a run of the money.
Leadership that is holding brief for other people who are outside the House.
We are not holding
And that is
brief.
what the Honorable Mudhama has been telling us. It's been in the media. We've been watching and hearing it. Kenyans know it.
All right, gentlemen.
The discussions have been there.
Mudhama is a senator, and you know, Mudhama, you know, as far as the definition of parliament, of the 11th parliament, we have a minority leader, Honorable Nyense.
Probably,
And we
Mheshimiwa,
have-
this is the opportunity to explain to Kenyans.
Yes.
Are you in court?
We are in court.
Comfortable with the leadership you have in the House?
We have
and
constituted.
You will maintain that
We
leadership
will
in the
maintain
House?
that leadership in the House to keep this government on check. And that's why we've been also asking the Jubilee Coalition. We've been asking you guys, why do you want to be the majority in park and pick?
Simple.
If you don't want to be checked.
I will answer that smart.
All right.
Yeah.
And it's good probably to go back into our history for the last couple of years. I'll take you back to 1991 when the only watchdog committee in the House was PSC. And probably you will see at that time, it's true
Yes.
that the standing orders provided for the position of PSC to be chaired by a member of the opposition then, when we were getting into multi-party democracy. And but the majority was from the KANU side. Come to 1997 to 2002, Mwai Kibaki, the former president, was the chairman of PSC.
Yes.
And the majority in that committee again were KANU members, who were in government. But after 2008, the standing orders were changed. And both the chairmanship and the majority was given to the opposition. But you remember after 2008, the kind of government we had, it was some funny arrangement, some funny coalition. So it wasn't really clear who was government and who was opposition in the House. Come probably towards the end of last year and beginning of this year, the standing orders were changed again. And it's important for this to be brought out for Kenyans to be able to understand.
And Anthony, and hang on, that is the spirit and the letter of the law?
Yeah. Yes. Today, as we speak, the standing orders are very clear that they do not give a majority to the opposition or to the minority, because in the first place there is no opposition in the House.
Which standing order are you quoting? Because, you know, we need to be very straight. But you remember that the traditions, and you start saying from 1991.
I was coming to that,
that's
what I was explaining.
There's been a tradition in the House.
A tradition, but we are not dealing with the tradition.
What are we dealing with?
We are dealing with the letter and the spirit of the law. And that's what I was coming out to explain, that at the time we changed the standing orders, and it is ODM that not only orchestrated these standing orders to be changed, but the Honorable Kenneth Marende, who had been sponsored as Speaker by ODM, was chairing the committee that changed the standing orders. The majority of the members in that committee that changed those standing orders ODM.
So I'm asking this. I just want to walk the public into this, because this is a whole maze and it brings confusion. In the last parliament, we had a government and an opposition.
Yes.
No opposition per se. No opposition per se, but there was some semblance of opposition in the end. Backbenchers provided opposition.
Yeah.
Yes. In this setup that we have now, we have majority and minority. Majority, incidentally, belongs to the Jubilee coalition.
Yes.
That's a fact.
That's a fact.
Minority belongs to the CORD coalition. So, in terms of checking government, in terms of Parliament providing leadership and saying we are going to provide oversight for government, how does that work?
Simple.
And why are you afraid to be checked?
Very simple.
Why is this Jubilee government
the other
afraid
myth that
to be
CORD wants Kenyans to believe?
Yeah.
That Jubilee does not want to be checked. First of all, it is very clear from our own constitution. Article 95 of the Constitution gives Parliament that oversight role. But it doesn't stipulate anywhere that that oversight will be the preserve of either the majority or the minority. It leaves it to the standing orders for Parliament to decide how the composition of the committees, that even the oversight committees, that's PSC and PIC, will be constituted. And standing order number 174 is very clear that will be purely on the basis of the strength of each political party, parliamentary political party. And that is how we do understand that in those committees.
Yeah, hang on. Let me Mr. Ota, having said that, and it's clear that CORD is minority.
Yes, we are minority.
And you have to play your role in the House, as it were. How then would you want that the Jubilee coalition to cede their position, the majority position?
Which is provided for in law.
It is not provided. What we are saying, it has been a tradition since that we are the minority in Parliament now, and they are already in government. CORD has a duty to check the Jubilee and keep them in check on the promises that they made to Kenya. But they cannot, at this time, want to bake their own cake, ice it and eat it without check. And that's why we've been saying that pack and pick, we must be the majority in order to check the Jubilee government. And that has been our position as a CORD. But the stick that it is not stipulated in standing orders that they can give us an extra majority, because they have refused to be checked. There are some things that they are hiding as a Jubilee government. And that's why we are saying Kenya need to know that this government of Jubilee do not want to be checked.
With all due respect to Mheshimiwa Outa, that is the myth that I want to dispel. That the Jubilee government is intent on stopping CORD from oversighting the work of government.
How will they do that?
Because the Constitution, I said, is very clear. That Parliament as a whole provides an oversight role.
That's interesting. But
It's actually insulting for those
the oversight
members
is from the minority. The oversight is not for the government.
As a member of the Jubilee government, a member who's only been sponsored to the House by Jubilee, I am there holding brief for the executive. I am not in the House holding brief for anybody in the executive. I am there to provide oversight on behalf of the people of Kenya. And that is in this constitution. The thing is that people are basing this on traditions. But business in the House is transacted on the basis of the standing orders and of course anchored on our own constitution. CORD and ODM have been some of the very outspoken people on the rule of law and constitutionality. But I do not understand why now that it is only convenient for you in CORD that you want us to abandon the constitution, abandon the standing orders, we are not to do what is politically expedient for you. Because what CORD is looking for, smart, is not to provide oversight. The myth that they have been perpetuating out there to the public is that Jubilee does not desire to be audited by the minority.
That's the gospel truth.
But it is not the gospel truth, because Mheshimiwa, I don't want to challenge Mheshimiwa
oversight
to tell us and tell the nation. If you truly understand what the work of the PAC is, tell us and tell the nation. Because I know PAC, the last report to be debated in that house, he's an old member in the house. I've just come in into the house. But I know for a fact that the last report of PAC to be discussed and debated in that chamber is the 2009-2010 accounts, government accounts. But in actual sense, what we'll be looking at, because this is the myth I want to dispel, that Jubilee doesn't want to be audited, that we want to audit ourselves. In actual fact, what PAC will be coming to audit this first 4 or 5 years of the Jubilee government is government and ministries that are actually being run by ODM ministers, by an ODM prime minister, and that is what CORD does not want Jubilee to have a majority to audit. Remember,
all right, let's give Mheshimiwa an opportunity to respond.
We want the Kenyan to know for sure that the Jubilee government do not want to be checked. Because if they want to be checked, what problem do they have if we as the minority who have been given this mandate to check the government to have majority in park and pick? What will be the big problem if you really want to be checked, unless you have something that you are hiding to the Kenyans?
I'll tell you what the problem
then is. That's the reasons why you keep on changing the goalpost. For us, we are ready to work and support the government, but this government must be checked on a daily basis. The new constitution has devolved all these things to departmentals. And you cannot be a government who want to be in majority in everything. How would you supervise yourself?
But Mr. Fred, let's just, to be fair to history and to Kenyans, didn't Kenyans give Jubilee majority? Didn't they do that?
The Kenya gave them majority, which we somehow, we might for now say. But if you're in majority, do you want to be able to run the government without allowing the minority to check what you are doing? Because you can have. That's the tyranny of numbers they keep on saying. If you have the tyranny of numbers, don't you want to be checked so that the Kenyan know the secret, all the corruption dealings that might be happening within the government offices?
We want to be checked as a Jubilee government. And we are only insisting that the laws of this country and the standing orders provides for Parliament as a whole to play that oversight role. And number one. Number two, we are saying PAC and PIC's work basically deals with the past, not the current events. So what we are coming to audit is not what government is doing this year, is what government has been doing over the last few years.
But that is where the board of contention is.
Because let me finish because I want this to be very clear. What PAC will be auditing is the 2010-2011 accounts, 2011-2012. I think you need, and Kenyans need to understand who were in government that time. What kind of things are we going to be auditing? We are going to be auditing the kazi kwa vijana. At a time, the former Prime Minister was in charge of that docket. We are going to be auditing the Ministry of Health. You know who was in charge, was ODM Secretary General, Professor Anyang' Nyong'o. The Ministry of Industrialization, the ODM Chairman, the Honorable Henry.
No.
Basically, what they do not want.
No, you are not.
We will be auditing ODM and what they were doing in government when they were in government. And that is the bone of contention, because they do not want us to audit that. They want to audit themselves. It is them who want to audit themselves.
Is this the promise that you made to Kenya to be starting auditing the work?
It is not a promise. It is what happens, and it is a fact.
I thought Jubilee,
from the Hansard Mheshimiwa,
I thought the Jubilee had promised Kenyans.
Is 2010.
They never promised them to audit, you know, the work of ODM. And by the way, it was not on ODM. That was a coalition government, including.
But you will agree most scandals at that time.
There was no scandal. The scandal where? Which scandal? There was no scandal. You know, those are the speculations.
NHIF.
Those are the speculations. If there were scandals, they would have been brought to book.
That is why you do not want Jubilee to come and audit these things.
The Jubilee had promised Kenyan to deliver their promises.
True, Mheshimiwa, and we will deliver.
And this is what we want really
you will stop derailing us from the business of transaction.
The Jubilee government, Honorable Anthony, the Jubilee government has no any business to do audit rather than provide services to this nation. They promise the nation. If your core value will only be going back to do witch hunting, is that the promise that you promise Kenya?
Let me say,
because you're talking of audit of the things of the past, and here yet you said you want to deliver laptops to the schools,
I am a
mail to the schools.
Qualified accountant. Therefore, I have got every authority to speak about auditing, and I can tell you, an auditor from the onset is said not to be a bloodhound. So we will not be auditing as bloodhounds. But to witch hunt anybody. We are not saying, and I think
who will be auditing the Jubilee government when they will be purchasing the laptops?
Parliament
which
will
they need
be
to do.
Auditing that.
So what will be our work as minority in the House?
It is up to you to carve your own niche in the House. It is not up to Jubilee.
Gentlemen, I'm listening to you both, and as confusing as this conversation has been in the last 4 days or so, it's not even helping having both of you here to square it out and have this conversation actually come to a possible conclusion. Having said what we've said in the first part, how do we move forward? How do we move forward, Honorable Kimani, from trying to understand, listen to the Code Coalition and say, fine, from what you say?
Jubilee, they've been pushing to have control of all the committees in the House. And if you look at their push, one thing that you can deduce from this is that they are trying to kill the separation of the three institutions, that is the judiciary, legislature and executive. What they want to do now is to bring together both the executive and legislators together, so that there will be no separation of powers, so that whenever they do their work, no any minority will be able to check. And this is the fear that we need to tell Kenya. If that happens, whereby everything will be lump-summed, that they control all the committees. Therefore, what will be the need of the minority to be in the House if they want to control everything? They don't want to be checked. And this is where we will have the highest corruption ever in this government of Jubilee. And my request to them, it doesn't hurt if they will allow CORD to check them, so that they give us the majority members in both two committees, and that is PAC and PIC. And this is the spirit of the Constitution, so that the Kenya moves on, and we know that if there's something going wrong, there is a big brother somewhere who is watching over them to tell Kenyans of their deeds. But if they insist that they must control PIC and PAC, then they need to tell Kenya, why do they want to control, or why do they want to have the majority of PIC and PAC? They need to be very clear, because that's what Kenya are not getting. They keep on talking about the Constitution, the standing orders, but this is the spirit and even the traditions of Parliament since 1991, where the government has been checked by the minority or the people in the opposition. And if they want to continue with that spirit, I think we'll be moving in the right direction. And we want to make sure that Jubilee deliver their promises. Kenyans will be waiting for milk. Kenya will be waiting for laptop. And we are ready to be able to...
I'm only wishing, as I listen to Mheshimiwa Outa say that, I'm only wishing they would be honest and very honest with Kenyans, to tell Kenyans the truth. That indeed, what is in the spirit of this constitution is not a minority being oversight over a majority. Because as we speak now, there is no opposition in the House. And that is why the constitution is very clear that it is Parliament as a whole that will provide oversight over government. The difference is this. Previously, and he's spoken about traditions and our history, before government was in the House, today there is no government in the House. And that is why it was important for the opposition to chair and maybe to have a majority in the House. Because ministers, cabinet ministers, were both ministers and members of parliament sitting inside the House. Today there is not a single member of government in that House. And therefore the spirit of the constitution is that parliament as a whole will provide oversight. But these people are suffering from hangovers of the past. And because they are intent on derailing the Jubilee government, and that has to be very clear, that their only motivation in insisting on us to negotiate ourselves out of the majority into the minority is simply to derail the work of government. And you remember, only 2 months back, we came from a hotly contested election. They refused to accept and concede defeat. They went to the Supreme Court. They lost the case of the Supreme Court. It's unfortunate, and I did say I've got tremendous respect for the former Prime Minister. But only 2 weeks ago, I heard him when he landed at JKIA telling Kenyans that we had an election that was stolen. IEBC did help them. The Supreme Court and rubbishing everything that the Supreme Court talking about 8,000, I don't know, 8 million pages of evidence that was thrown out. Then we started talking about changing the system of government from a presidential system to a parliamentary system.
Let's bring this conversation to the center, though.
Yeah.
Supposing you are on the other side of this debate,
yes.
Supposing you are in the minority,
yeah.
How would you propose to check a government?
I would do one thing: have respect for our constitution and the rule of law. Respect the standing orders as they are today. And if there's anything I would seek to change, if I wanted to have oversight as minority, as it has been in the past, what they say,
the traditions,
there are provisions on how to amend those standing orders. Only about 2-3 weeks ago we amended the same standing orders. I'm asking myself, why is it that court is not intent on amending these standing orders, but want to create an artificial stalemate in order to derail the work of government? Because I was taking back some weeks back, because they have been saying, let me finish, Mheshimiwa. They have been saying, and they said after they lost the Supreme Court battle, that we will pursue alternative means. I want to tell you today that these are the alternative means that they spoke about, that they are pursuing.
Right.
But from the
but you have seen the polls, the exit polls, which came out last week. And you could see,
but the polls had a different
but let me tell you,
from what was
from that
tallied,
exit
and
poll,
I was with
you could definitely, and Kenya and the world could now tell that we were the winner of the last general elections.
Two,
you see,
American professors whom you have
it's
paid,
not American professors. We are just telling you,
whom you pay to,
the exit poll is exact.
And this is smart.
And we are not ready
to
go back.
You see,
you know, when we're talking about the Supreme Court, we had presented, you know, the evidence, pages after pages.
8,000 pages I had.
And only the Supreme Court came with only 3 sentences.
But didn't you
without checking all this evidence and they throw them out?
Of that Supreme Court?
We respect, but when the Supreme Court is not behaving and ignoring all the evidences and coming out and telling Kenya in a 1-minute sentence without checking everything.
To Kenyans that you will respect
we did
the
because of the
Supreme Court.
We did, but reluctantly.
To respect that.
We did reluctantly, because there were overwhelming evidence. And here is a court that is not ready to check the evidence and come out and say,
if there was
you
evidence,
lost.
Smart. And right. I really do not want this discussion to go into the business of the 8,000 pages.
Hang on. As we are right now in this country, we have a stalemate, artificial or whatever, it's a stalemate.
It's artificial.
It isn't.
Whatever it is, how do we cure this problem that has come through? Because Kenyans want to understand what is your position in that house, what is Mheshimiwa Oute's position in that house. If there is massive corruption, how do we cure that with the stalemate that we have?
I think what Kenyans need to understand is that the oversight role in Parliament is not a preserve of one faction of the political divide inside the House, but that role is to be exercised by the House as a whole.
And for that, if that's the case, why do you find it difficult to have majority in court?
Because you're the minority. You cannot be majority, you're the minority.
I mean the minority.
And that is a fact.
We want to have majority in all these committees.
Mheshimiwa, with all due respect, if you wanted to have majority anywhere, be it in the House or in Parliament
in the House, why is it difficult for them to cede? Because all of us are members, and we are just asking you as the members of the 11th Parliament that for the sake of this country to move on, for the sake of this country to keep check on this government, for the sake of this country to stop massive corruption that might come,
which was perpetrated in the last regime by members of the ODM party.
Mheshimiwa Outa, how else can you check the Jubilee government if it stays like this? Because the problem with the argument that you're in right now is that you don't have the numbers and Kenyans decided. So how else would you check a Jubilee government with the minority?
And that's what we've been pleading with the Jubilee government.
Supposing they don't change.
Suppose they don't change. What we can do, we can tell Kenyans, they have refused to be checked. So now let them have their cake, bake it, ice it, and eat it. So anything happens to Kenyans, we will blame the government of Jubilee. And Kenyans will know from now on, if they refused, that this is a government that has refused to be what? To be checked. And there will be massive corruption.
You will understand why, Smart, I am saying that this is an artificial stalemate created by CORD simply to paint the Jubilee government in bad light in the eyes of the public. And what I'll be asking the CORD coalition and its leadership, as much as we are not clear where that leadership is as we speak today, whether inside or outside of the House, but whether inside or outside, I would be asking them to do one thing. First of all, respect the letter and the spirit of the Constitution and our own standing orders. If you are desirous of changing anything, you have got the numbers in Parliament, your members are sitting in those committees, the standing order committees that can change those. And if you want to truly know that it is artificial, they told us the other day that they were going to withdraw their members from all other committees if we do not cede ground on PAC and PIC. You've seen it today. Their members were sitting in the appointments committee vetting cabinet secretaries. And that is why we are saying, if you can only be honest with Kenyans, and I would beg of you to be honest with Kenyans, that when things change,
I want to correct that. Withdrawing all our members from the committees,
that is what
which have not been formed, that is PAC, PIC, and the rest of the departmental committees. The other one you are talking about has already been formed.
You don't have a problem with the committee.
We don't have a problem. Probably we do not. Appointment committee we don't have.
If we're in the House, you check the House. That is what they said on the floor of the House, that they will be withdrawing their members.
But I'm correcting
and I remember the majority leader interjecting
I want to correct you
on the committees that had already been formed. But to move away from that, Mheshimiwa, I wanted to say this. I wanted to say this, Mheshimiwa, moving away from that. I think what Kenyans are desirous of seeing is how do we get out of this artificial stalemate. And
can we start providing solutions for that?
Yes, very simple. Let these people respect the law as it is. If we want to change anything in the law, there are mechanisms within the same law on how to do that. If only we can do that, and also respect members of the Jubilee government inside the House, that we are not in that House to hold brief for anybody. And also appreciate the fact that things and times have changed in this country. A time when
you've been talking about holding brief, he's been talking about this over and over.
Yes, because we are not holding brief for anybody.
We're not talking about holding brief. You have formed the government.
Yes.
And what CORD is saying as a minority in Parliament, please allow court to check
But
on.
that has to be on the basis of law.
The law is.
We cannot simply negotiate outside of the law.
We are not negotiating. And this had been tradition.
You're asking us to negotiate ourselves out of the majority.
We are
into
not.
a minority.
If you have Kenya at heart and Jubilee want to deliver on their services, the best thing that even us as court we have done today, we do not want to hold Kenya at ransom because we have seen the nominees, the presidential nominees. And that's why we have decided to go for vetting today. We have seeded the ground, if that could be. We have seeded ground. Our members of parliament who are appointed in the appointment committee today start from morning to evening to be able to vet these great Kenyans who in future, if it is passed through the house, would be the cabinet secretaries. With that kind of spirit is what we are asking Jubilee. If that is the spirit to move Kenya on, why do you find it difficult for court just to have even one member above the membership of PAC?
Let me take you back. Let me take you back a little. Hang on.
Yeah.
We can go back and forth. But
Yeah.
see, the interesting thing about this conversation is that before this great conversation of committees, the other conversation that came before this, that was for the MP's pay, I'd find you on the same side.
Yeah.
Maybe yes, maybe not.
You have anything to say about that?
I don't have anything to say about that because the matter is in a committee of the House, and we cannot discuss anything that is being discussed in a committee of the House. It will be against the standing orders.
It's the same, but what we are saying, even the world over, it is unacceptable to be able to reduce an individual salary or an individual wage by half. Always either you maintain it or you give a raise. But this is the first time in this country where we have seen somebody is developing a culture of impunity, that is called impunity, to be able to reduce a salary of the sitting member of parliament. And I think it will be very clear to Kenyans that we are not demanding a pay rise or an increase. What we are asking the commission is to maintain the members of parliament.
I'll tell you this, and I'll give you a classic example of what happened in the House today when we were discussing the division of revenue bill. Both members from the CORD coalition and those from the Jubilee coalition who worked marvelously well together in the best interest of the people of Kenya to ensure that devolution actually does take root in this country and that adequate resources are devolved to the county governments. And we have accommodated amendments both from the Jubilee side of the coalition and others from the CORD coalition. And I think if only that spirit would go on, and I can hear what Mheshimiwa is saying, that spirit of bipartisanship is what we are calling for. And it is a fact that recently in the House Business Committee, there was actually an agreement on how seats would be shared out, even in PSC and PIC. And in that spirit and in our magnanimity as Jubilee, we actually ceded 3 seats in PSC and PIC to our colleagues because we wanted them to have an active role in those committees too. Because we were entitled, I think, to, was it 19 seats, and we were entitled to 10. And we ceded and we agreed we would take 14, they would take 13. And we have done that. The only problem is, and it's unfortunate that I came to learn from Mheshimiwa here, that the person who had called from London was the people in their party leadership, because I imagined it was their benefactors from abroad who had directed them.
I think that was misguided. It's never called. You know, that is something that you speculated with your friend.
No,
there was no call from London.
I said it was your own member from the CORD coalition.
Yeah.
Who intimated to me that is actually a Costarian, and he told me in Swahili, iko mzee amepiga simu toka London akasema tusipeane majina. And I asked him, who is this mzee who is directing CORD, a coalition that is so strong in this country, with able leadership under the Honorable Francis Nyenze in the House. And when I was raising that matter in the House, all I was seeking to do was to seek clarification on who is this was directing other. Coming back to my point I wanted to say, if only, Mheshimiwa, you left it and the management, you left the management of your coalition affairs in the House to the leadership that Kenyans have entrusted in that House, and you stop taking directions from outside the House.
But when you talk of direction,
the House Business Committee,
just hold on. When you're talking of taking instructions from outside the Parliament,
yes.
The other day when I was suspended,
yes,
you could see the body language of the Speaker of the National Assembly. Yeah, the guy was already received all the instruction of what he need to do, whether the court will accept or not. Because even the punity of suspending outside could tell you that he took an instruction from the executive.
That is an absolute lie,
and I will tell you
on national TV.
Yes,
because Kenyans are watching live
the executive
when the Speaker made his decision, and it was at the impasse of the moment. Because when I mentioned the old man and I say there was an emotional outburst in the House, which shocked me because I didn't know why they were so emotional. It's only now that I'm learning they believe that I was referring to their party leader, and I have a lot of respect for the honourable former Prime Minister. I wouldn't have said that.
We must wind down this conversation.
Let me say this.
We must wind this conversation.
There is no way, because I want to correct that misconception, that the Speaker was taking directions from the executive. That can never happen unless they're imagining. What they said was not possible, that you could manage things via Skype. And I'm sure
you tell me the standing orders that will make the Speaker to make that conclusive ruling, to have the names of the departmental committees stable without court. You tell me under any standing orders. Where was it written? If it was not an instruction from the executive,
if only you are not very
who did not really want, the executive, what they want is to be able to have this mixed grill, whereby the Parliament and the executive inseparable, so that when the orders comes, and that's why they want to maintain all the chair of all the departmental committees, both in the select committee and departmental committee, so that they do not want to be checked.
The Constitution is so clear that there is a clear separation between the executive and the legislature. And it is the legislature to provide oversight.
I've been listening to both of you for a while, and to my surprise, we still don't have clarity, and we are still discussing the same issues that we were discussing on Tuesday. So clearly, this issue cannot be sorted out. Is that what you are saying? Is that what you are telling the country?
It can be sorted out if the Jubilee want to be checked, and by tomorrow they sit with maybe one member and have the court to have the majority in both Park and Pick.
It can be sorted out that way.
It can be sorted out that way.
How can it be sorted out?
If they really want us to move on.
It can be sorted out by simply the court leadership agreeing to respect the letter and spirit of the law. One. Also respecting members of the Jubilee coalition who are in that House. That we also in that House to represent our people. One. Two, to provide oversight.
Can Jubilee seat one member, as he said, so that court can have the majority? Can you negotiate your way out?
As we did today, to go to
one. We could do that if it was provided for in law. The standing orders that we work with in Parliament. Let me finish, Mheshimiwa. The standing orders do not allow Jubilee to negotiate itself out of the majority into the minority. Two, what is it that court is seeking to do? It is to derail government, business and government operations by taking over these two committees. It is the alternative means they spoke about after they lost the Supreme Court battle, that they want to use the committees to perpetuate.
So why is the Jubilee?
That is why we cannot cede.
You're not going to cede.
We are not going to cede because they want to use those committees to derail government operations. And if only they could respect the letter and spirit of this Constitution and the standing orders, we can resolve this tomorrow. The same way they have agreed to allow their members
to all of us will be doing an oversight and will be sitting in this committee, how then would a court derail the government of the day? If you're going to be sitting the same way we are saying that if you allow us only one more member so that we can have the majority, and you also be sitting in that committee, where's the problem? And why do you want to be afraid?
It is very simple, Mheshimiwa, and that is what these people are looking for. Have a majority in those committees and perpetually paint the Jubilee side of the government as people who are corrupt, people who are thieves. Number two, they want to cover up their misdeeds in the past. And I didn't point it out. that our first business in those committees, both PAC and PIC, will be to go back to the audit reports of 2010, 2011.
But you're in the government.
Before we come, by the time we come
you're in
to
the
2013, 2014,
you know the problem I'm having
with my... We'll be in the year 2017, 2018. And that time, this committee is going to be serving this house for 3 years. Believe me, if we're talking about this debate 3 years from now, they will not be pushing to have a majority.
Honorable
because
Kimani.
all they're after is because they want to audit their own work.
Okay, gotten that point.
You know, what is Honorable Kumani, we are talking to Kenyans. I'm really amazed and perplexed if you are telling Kenyans that the only service you want to deliver and you promise Kenya is to do an audit.
We are not delivering.
Because you keep on saying that.
PSC,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. You know, when you're talking of audit and you have all these promises you made to Kenya. But I know you guys are afraid to be checked because you have promised to deliver laptop and milk to schools.
We will do.
And for example, my brother, imagine in Nyando today, you want to bring a laptop to Standard 1, and all our schools are submerged under what?
Water.
Underwater. Is that a priority? That's not really that's a misplaced priority. And that's why you want a quick, you know, settling of service delivery on a misplaced service that Kenya do not need. If you want to bring laptops to the schools, then take it to the high schools rather than taking it to the one who do not even have a desk,
I think,
who do not have anything. But it is only a matter of where the Jubilee want to make business by setting up laptop and providing milk. And that's why they do not want to be checked.
Let me have your final thoughts as we go through. We going to discuss this the whole night, discuss it tomorrow. We're never going to agree on it clearly. You're all south and north. It will never come to the center. But to give Kenyans what they deserved, Kenyans on March the 4th went to the elections and voted for you, voted for him, and many others on different levels, on different qualities and different beliefs. How do we move from where we are, from a divisive politics that characterized the March 4th election, with this debate that we've had here tonight? How do we move forward without saying the law said, the law said, the law said? How do we move forward?
Very simple. And for those of us in Jubilee, that is our only intention, to move forward. If only we could stop being derailed. And that's what I'd be pleading with the court leadership, both within and outside the house, because it's now clear that directions are also coming from outside of the house. Stop derailing us from implementing that manifesto. Because I can promise you the Jubilee government is intent on delivering on each and every promise that they made to the Kenyan people. And we cannot do this if we cannot function even in those committees. The way forward. And it has been suggested on the floor of the House, and I would be asking Mheshimiwa to ask their leadership why they are not accommodating that view. Have members of all the other committees and put aside PAC and PIC as we negotiate, because at the end of the day we have to come to an agreement. Give us names for all the other committees, and those committees will be up and running, and will be up and running delivering on the promises and the pledges that we made to the Kenyan people. That we are intent on doing, if only we could get that support from our brothers who is very clear only intent on derailing us from delivering on that promise.
All right.
I think personally we owe it to Kenyans, because we are elected to Kenya to deliver services. And I want to plead with the Jubilee members of Parliament, especially the Jubilee government, by accepting us as court to have an oversight of this government, allowing us the majority membership in PAC and PIC, will not derail any promises that you made to Kenyans, but it will really strengthen you to give an oversight and even to be able to create an environment whereby we could be able to point out your weaknesses and your strength, so that you deliver. We really want you to deliver the promises you made to Kenya. But this we cannot do when we still have, you know, our baggage from the last general elections, and we bring it in the House and using derogatory statements, you know, so that you'll be able to intimidate, and the Speaker would be taking a little slumber not to be able to make control in the House to check those people like Linturi, who's going beyond board just to create confusion in the House so that this stalemate will continue. That's the way I look at it. And I want also the Speaker to be keen, and I pray that he will be able to have some wisdom to be able to contain this 11th Parliament. But if he doesn't do it, that's going to be a marketplace. It's going to be a chaos.
I think he had that wisdom when he threw him out after he
that
became
that was not wisdom. That was, I mean, I wish you saw the body language of the Speaker. That was not wisdom.
It was
that
wisdom
was
because
anger,
you are being disorderly.
because you are stopping me to implement my orders from above. If it was the wisdom, and Linturi used a derogatory language on a honorable member, and he was set scot-free without punishment. Uta only stood on a point of order to correct my brother, the Honorable.
Outa smart to set the record straight because it's there on live TV.
On a point of order.
Shouted, stupid!
Yeah, and on just a point of order.
And that is why he was thrown out of the House.
And I was thrown out with a punishment.
That you think it was too heavy?
Too heavy, and while the Speaker is comfortably allowing the people who are in government
out of order, you're thrown out.
All right, gentlemen, I have to thank you both for making time this evening. Nyando MP, Fred Outa, and Kikui MP, Anthony Kimani, both. Thank you very much. This is a serious conversation that must be given the seriousness it deserves, and we hope that you and your colleagues might find time and the wisdom that you're talking about tonight to resolve this stalemate. We're watching. Thank you. All right, that's it for us on KTN Live. Thank you very much for your company the entire night. That's how we do it on KTN Livewire. My name is James Marslick. We'll do this all over again next week.